That's being a little bit slow.
All right, I guess that's our signal that we can proceed. So I'm just going to call our meeting to order, Wednesday, April 1st. And the first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. And I don't think there are any late items that I'm aware of. Sarah?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, I think we've got enough items on our agenda as it is, I would suggest. So can I have a motion that we approve the agenda, please? Thanks. Kirsty, seconded by Betty. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the agenda is passed as presented. Second item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes from our previous meeting. And those have been distributed. And that was our meeting on February 3rd, 2026. And hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review those. Before I call the question regarding approval, has anyone got any errors or omissions to note? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Richard Domeyer. I'll second that one. Oh, Kirsty, thank you. All in favor? Aye. And those minutes are passed.
And I'm here, Councillor Jurgensen, if you guys need me for anything.
Great. Okay, thank you, Alex. Councillor Jurgensen, sorry. I should learn to be a little more formal than I have a tendency to be. Okay, and that then brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is public comments. Do we have any members of the public? I know we have some delegations with us, or a delegation with us, but do we also, aside from that, have any members of the public? Sarah, do you know?
Not that I can see. Somebody called Larry joined. Is that?
Yes, I'm with Bowen Island Properties. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So no, there's no members of the public.
Okay, well then I guess we can skip through public comments, and we're already ahead of our agenda by 5 minutes. That brings us to item 4, delegations. And I understand that we have Bowen Island Properties representatives with us. I'm not sure who or how many will be presenting.
Thank you. I'm not sure in terms of format and formality here, so I'll jump in. My name is Edward Porter. I'm a senior planner, urban designer, and partner with Modus Planning, Design, and Engagement. And we've been supporting Bowen Island Properties through the planning process and putting the application together. We met most of you on site in the site tour not that long ago. I'm joined here by fellow staff Val, who's been a stalwart as part of the planning effort as well as Scarlett and Larry, who are part of the Bowen Island Properties team. So we're really here to offer some context for the application, I guess, in addition to what you would have already read through the materials circulated by Daniel. And really be available to answer any questions. So
Okay.
I do have some prepared remarks, which I'd love to read through, and really don't want to take more than about 5 minutes to do so, if that works for the agenda.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for those introductions, and welcome to all of you. And yes, please go ahead. And I would suggest that we maybe save our questions until the end of your presentation, if it's only going to be in the range of 5 minutes or so. Please go ahead.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And maybe just to check, Larry and Scarlett, no further remarks on your side prior to... Okay, that's great. Thanks so much. I will keep it brief. That's why we write it down. So it's great to be back here with you and have this chance for more material discussion on the Zoom call this evening. I want to begin by situating the conversation within a broader context of master plan community development on Bowen, and specifically at Cowan Point, recognizing that the context that we understand is really critical to understanding the intent of this proposal, what we understand and believe as strong logic and merit. Cowan Point has long been identified in Bowen's official community plan as a comprehensive development area. It's one of the very few places on the island where growth and the critical infrastructure to support that growth has not only been anticipated and directed through policy, but it's also been physically implemented, operated, and improved at scale and over decades of time. That is to say, significant investment has already been made in this specific place to establish the neighborhood served by streets and trails, potable water storage and treatment systems, sanitary collection, treatment and disposal systems, drainage infrastructure, as well as natural open space and recreational amenities. That is to say, this is not an application that proposes growth in a new unserviced or unplanned area, but rather to the contrary, it's proposed within a designated growth node already planned and built. And it seeks to better respond to what we understand as current, urgent and emerging community needs on Bowen. So we keep in mind that the existing zoning allows this site to be developed as 9 single family lots spread out over these approximate 15 acres. And that this current as of right development scenario exists based on the current zoning. So the proposal in the amendment application offers an alternative to that within the same footprint, a mix of more compact housing forms, a range of unit types, and neighborhood serving uses. In simple terms, we see this as a choice, a small number of large homes, which are abundantly available all over Bowen, or a more complete neighborhood with housing forms that are scarcely available elsewhere. The proposal is grounded in the tenets of Bowen's OCP and supported by the clear objectives of the Cowan Point Comprehensive Development Area Policy, including cluster development, diverse housing types, land for community use, protection of natural areas. As we've previously discussed and had a chance to present to Council, Policy 147 in the OCP also provides further explicit discretion to consider proposals that exceed some of those base permissions where there's demonstrated community benefit. And that's actually precisely what this application is intended to do. We believe it's not a departure from the OCP, but rather a full-spirited embrace of and direct response in support of it. An effort to implement the vision that's long been in place for this area in a way that reflects present-day need, and arguably in a better way in this place. It's also important to recognize what engagement for this application and the current OCP update process has surfaced. Early engagement has largely reinforced the need for greater housing diversity, more attainable options, and planning for a broader range of residential needs. These are not new ideas, but they're being clearly expressed again now through the OCP engagement. I should say the update of the OCP. And what this application is hoping to offer is an opportunity to respond to those needs in a location where the framework and the infrastructure already exist to support that outcome. The site plan we shared as part of the agenda for today's meeting is also intended to illustrate how that policy direction can take shape on the ground in a more sort of form-based character sense. Shows how new housing, open space, and community uses can be organized to support that complete and walkable neighborhood better. And to that end, the benefits enabled by the proposal, we believe, are significant, including a broader range of housing options for families, for workers, seniors on service land, space for local serving shops and services, recreation and gathering space at a human scale, and a more walkable, connected neighborhood to complement what exists today at Cowan Point. The vision is about doing more with less. It's about building a more complete and resilient community. And perhaps more importantly, we see this as an incredible opportunity because this vision is immediately implementable. What distinguishes this proposal is that the servicing has already been addressed. The infrastructure and its capacity to support community need is not theoretical. It exists. It's built, it's fully operational and quality controlled. We understand this is a clear community opportunity, allowing the focus of our discussion, hopefully, to shift from if this land can or should be developed to how and for whom it should be developed. So finally, I'd like to directly address the decision that is actually before council at this stage. It's not a decision on a final approval, it's a first reading. Does this proposal have enough merit to proceed to first reading for more detailed review? Moving forward allows further technical analysis, design refinement, continued engagement with the community, and from a planning perspective, this is where most of that meaningful work can occur. With that in mind, I want to also directly address any temptation to defer the application until after the OCP update is complete. As a planner, I recognize that deferral can be a very reasonable approach and politically safe approach where context and or policy direction are uncertain or incomplete. And in this case, however, we believe both are just very well established. Cowan Point's a designated growth area, has been planned as such, and decades of capital investment have helped realize its ongoing development. The technical findings and engagement insights that we see in the current OCP update is reinforcing, not redefining, the already urgent and growing need for that housing diversity. It's identifying the limitations of service land on Bowen, and it's reinforcing the continued need to embrace best practices related to more efficient use of our land resources. If we're not able to advance housing diversity, amenity, and community benefits at a place like Cowan Point, where the planning framework and infrastructure are already in place, then what? We choose to develop a smaller number of larger homes whereby we believe we follow the letter of the current bylaw but fail its spirit. So delaying this application doesn't change those three fundamental elements. The land is designated for growth, the infrastructure is in place, and the need for this diversity exists. I believe that deferral will only postpone the opportunity to make tangible progress. We might further engage in that detailed work through the rezoning process. The application should not be viewed as a premature or as premature to the ongoing OCP update, but we believe it should be allowed to proceed so it can actively be considered as part of that process and complementary to it. The land is a critical community resource, and by moving forward to the first reading, council shows and allows this project to be utilized as a tangible asset that can be shaped, refined, and mobilized to address Bowen Island's most pressing needs. Let's do the detailed collaborative work necessary to align the asset with the community's vision rather than leaving it waiting on the sidelines. Thank you for your time, and we welcome your questions and the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. I see that we have had a member of the public join us. And Mr. Leishman, we have passed the public comment item on our agenda. Had you wished to speak to the APC? Is that why you're joining us, or are you here as an observer?
No, Brenda, I'm here as an observer only, but thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right then. Do any members of the APC have any questions? Maybe just raise your hand or let me know if you do. Richard Underdown, you look like you're contemplating one.
Well, I'm just going over my notes here, Brenda, and trying to formulate a question. Thank you for the presentation, Edward. And I guess I'm coming from a place of wondering why we aren't waiting for the OCP process to be complete. And you did address that, and I guess I am being somewhat persuaded that this reading can go ahead as a complement to the OCP process. Perhaps. I think the OCP is going to give us what the total build out for the island should be. And I guess that's the overarching question, not necessarily where everything should be developed, but what is the total carrying capacity of the island? And I'm reticent to move forward without knowing what that carrying capacity is. So it's not really a question, but just thoughts I'm having right now. The one, I guess this is a question. There's a transportation study that's been undertaken that's referred to in the documentation that's been provided. And the thing I'm grappling with there is how the existing infrastructure can accommodate 300 plus homes, 300 more cars minimum, without any infrastructure upgrade. Can you speak to that point, Edward? How do you see the existing transportation network as being sufficient for a doubling in the number of homes at Cowan Point?
Sure thing. It's an interesting context there as well around carrying capacity. And then I think as you move to the question around transportation, traffic, road network, right, as something measurable and impacts based on growth. I think what's interesting to me about that is again, the question of context comes into play. And Betty, I saw your hand go up, and I believe you're on the steering committee as well. So I want to go back there as assuming you were going to offer maybe some insight as well, some additional context. So saw that come back real quick. The carrying capacity piece, I will say, is they're kind of two nested scales. There's what's going on at Cowan Point, and then there's Bowen as a whole. And so again, I think what we've been exploring here and really see is the opportunity for this to accommodate growth in a different way. So we see real capacity in the systems in place at Cowan Point. And because those systems are in place and they can support that amount of future growth and housing specifically towards island need, that's where we see a real opportunity. On the point of traffic and trip generation, I think that's where the transportation understanding starts to get interesting and nuanced. And it's very often a very unpopular conclusion in traffic impact studies, where a traffic engineer looks at a road and looks at number of cars per, start your stopwatch, moving at 30 kilometers an hour, and how many cars can move in a one, 2-lane, 1 lane each direction over the course of an hour. And those numbers and those volumes get massive. And so from a technical perspective, the street network on Bowen can, all the way from Cowan Point back up into Snug Cove and pretty much anywhere you want to go, those roads can accommodate those volumes. The challenge comes, as we all know, with traffic and turning and getting behind somebody in the ferry lineup, right? The other point that we make in what we're trying to build here is a form of housing to serve a demographic profile that also might not necessarily be commuting as much. And that's based on who they are, what kind of housing they need, as well as the opportunity to have some mixed use introduced there for daily amenity, daily service, right? So that you're not always in your car. These folks wouldn't necessarily be commuting to a job. So you start to get into the analytics of taking those units, those housing units over time, which are growing by market absorption and phasing of how many units per year, not 300, This is a gradual build out over time. And then of those units of housing that are built, the trip generation is going to be very distributed based on who those folks are, how many trips they make, what time of day, et cetera. So that's where that traffic impact assessment is thoughtful and considerate of what's being proposed for Bowen in this place in the context of the street network. So I hope that helps. I mean, John would come on and explain that probably much better than I can, and can get into those technical details, and we would welcome that discussion. We'd invite him in to have further detailed discussion of that.
Thank you. And I'll just, I note that we've got Betty Morton had her hand up, and as well Councillor Jurgensen after Betty. So we have Betty, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, the longer I wait, the more questions I have, so maybe I have to wait my turn. I did have originally, Edward, and thank you for your presentation, a question about sort of the pacing of development, housing versus some of the community recreation versus some of the amenities that are more like businesses or that sort of thing. What are you thinking?
Great question. I know that the housing need is urgent. My sense is that that's also the revenue generating side of the equation on the development end, more so than the commercial and those kinds of commercial retail units and how that forms a part of more amenity space. I would love to have a more detailed conversation on what a phase one would look like in a real material way. I don't think we know. I mean, so I think a market offering, and maybe there's pent up demand for multifamily, and I say multifamily like compact flats and smaller units on the island. What would that look like in a build out, right? What's the capacity to do a dozen units in a year, 20 units in a year, to start to frame a portion of that? Do you move with that first phase in the little kind of village node, whatever the little, hub of activity there, and start to frame some of that community space? We show that in the application as a bit of the render to say you could kind of hold the corner with a little bit of a small kiosk opportunity, and whether that becomes a pop-up commercial or even just a kind of an open space pavilion to animate a little bit of the corner plaza space as you start to build body heat in that area. I think we'd want to I'd love to get deeper into the design and phasing of that. But I think these are fairly small, modest phases in light of market realities, and particularly in this market. That being said, I think there may be some real pent-up demand to move more quickly on Bowen, because I think this is a form of housing that is needed. So I'm sorry, I don't have a very good crystal ball here, but I would love to do the design on that and get, measurable into an answer there.
Okay, Brenda, do you want me to wait my questions for Alex?
Sure. I think he's had his hand up for a little while. So Councillor Jurgensen?
Thank you, through the chair, Planner Edward. Mr. Edward, thank you so much for your presentation. Also good to see you again, Val. We had a presentation from your team that I believe Val was at, a very robust discussion at the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And I just wanted to flag that for the APC, my fellow APC members here, that we had that discussion, and I can provide the link to the recording of that meeting if you like, but it was a very robust discussion, and I'm looking forward to seeing as the design gets picked apart here at the APC and what questions will come out of that. And and just what the next steps will look like for the development planning as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I know I have a couple. Richard Domeyer.
Thanks, Madam Chair and Edward. Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about this development, but in a guarded way, because I from my reading of the presentation accept that the services are in place, that a lot has been done. That a lot has been given to the community in order to allow this development to happen. And I guess the question, maybe there's a question, does one need to do more? I'm not expecting you to answer that. I think my reservation about this development is that we have words like permissions, implementable, promise, and the vision is beautiful, but there's no guarantee that that vision will actually be implemented. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just very bitten by past failures, but too many times there's been this vision of this neighborhood with the commercial buildings, and then that never happens because the commercial buildings are difficult to let. They are not a moneymaker. There are just reasons they never happen. So I also wanted to say, I think when I read for sure when I read the traffic report, it says this report is based on the commercial. The report is based on the zoning vision for this development. In other words, that there is a vision for commercial, that the traffic plan is based on having a commercial component that will reduce trips. And then if that commercial component never gets implemented, then obviously the traffic management plan is not really valid, not entirely valid. I think it also mentioned 100 trips a day, of which 7 are peak ferry time trips, 7 each way at peak ferry times. So, that gives some idea of how many trips this is generating. There'll be trips to school, there'll be trips to buy groceries, and then maybe you can combine those 2 trips. You'll go to school and you'll take the kids to school and you'll buy groceries at the same time. And there are also, ideas for, if I could find them, for reducing trips. And find it now in my notes. But anyway, I think the promise is beautiful. What the reality will be, maybe something else. So sorry, it's not a question, and I don't want to put you in a spot, because I think if I ask you how you're going to solve this, I don't think it'll be a good answer, or it'll be difficult to answer.
And if I can formulate that into a question, because it kind of leads into one I was going to ask, which is that the proposal does indicate, a variety of different permission to build for a variety of different uses that aren't currently permitted, and with the idea being for a restaurant and some shops, potentially guest accommodation. But my question is this: is Bowen Island Properties, is the developer intending to build those, or just wants permission to be able to if they decide they wish to?
Great question. And I'd love to circle back to Richard's question as well. I think the simple answer to yours is that this is a first step to allow permission. Whether or not they would be the builder would be a decision down the road. You know, they have been building, and they are a capable builder, but they also may, based on scale or pace or capacity or need, they may be looking to engage third-party builder partners. And so I don't want to, like, the exercise that we're in right now is that planning exercise of allowing that future to unfold, right? Without these permissions, it will never be built. There won't be an option for Bowen Island Properties or a third party to participate here in this vision. So that's where we're starting. I hope that's helpful as a kind of quick answer to that. And if you'll allow me just to reach back to Richard.
Please. Yeah.
On that idea of guarantees, I hear that. We heard that through engagement, and I think it's something worth being really sensitive to and approaching with some tangible and constructive tools. And what I mean by that is I don't want to preclude the optimism towards the future and this vision because of past disappointments. So that's something that we've kind of wanted to be very sensitive around. And there are tools around development servicing agreements and phasing agreements that can be fairly simple around restrictive covenants and conditions for future development within a footprint this small. It doesn't have to be a great big complicated legal agreement. Hopefully it's not, for everyone's benefit, but you know, we can say things around the extent of that commercial space, or kind of what we understand as more of that amenity space being built as residential units are coming online. You know, there's a simple way of creating unit thresholds to build to say at this unit, this element must be completed, or some other way of doing that. I think it's sensitive, right? And we want to be reasonable around the extent of commercial area that you would spend your dollars on and frame up and have empty, but that could all, like, that's where we look at other really interesting local examples where folks will build like the sales center, the discovery center, or some presence on site that can serve as community space or seasonal pop-up, or, you know, maybe it transitions into more of a standalone cafe that serves things. It's also why, you know, in thinking about looking for an operator and an independent service, senior supportive model, you can have some of that business operation also then run a cafe on the side, right? And have that open to a neighborhood. So those are the interesting layered partnerships that we have to really get creative at this scale, right? It's a small scale, marginal, incremental growth development. And so we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but I think there are ways to control so that it doesn't feel like, you know, the residential is coming on and the rest of the land is left kind of as a holding site for future development. Like, I think there are ways that we can think about this master plan and phase development in a way that transitions in a maybe a more elegant way.
Kirsty, do you have your hand up?
You're muted.
You're on
Okay,
mute.
yeah, no, I sorry, lost the button. I'm sort of asking a point of clarification. Are we gonna, we have a point, this is a question period for the delegation. Are we gonna move into a discussion period where it's us talking with each other?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, because that's what I'm waiting for. I don't have questions. I do have some comments. And so, but I'll wait until then. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody else have yes, Richard Underdown and then Betty?
Yeah, Edward, just following up on the build out of the commercial area. The biggest component to that will be the proposed inn, I believe. And when Brenda was asking about who was going to be building, whether it was Bowen Island Properties or another builder, I think the point of the question was who is financing the building of this. So is it Bowen Island Properties that are proposing building an inn and then hiring a hotelier to operate it? Or are they going to be looking to someone else to finance the whole build out and presumably operate it as well?
I'm glad Scarlett's here. She looks like she has something to say. I will just say, from the planning perspective, we've been holding this design as a place where that would be a complementary use to animate that space. And so again, in terms of layering and trying to do this in a way that can be flexible and kind of spark opportunity in that space, we thought it was a good idea to hold that use. And there's also a bit of a nuance here around some of the lower landing area and keeping it unencumbered for some of the planning work that's happening around the Circle Ferry exploration. So pulling the in use up the hill and saying we can accommodate that here in the context of this little node as a good idea from the kind of master planning urban design perspective in that space. So that's where we are in terms of holding it in the plan and the permissions, and I can pass the mic to Scarlett and maybe she can talk a little bit more about the specific development operational ambitions of Bowen Island Properties.
Hi. Yeah, when it comes to actually how to build all this, within this spot zoning, there are a number of different elements. I mean, there is the inn, there's the commercial spaces, there's also the seniors living. The residential isn't just condos, there's also what we would like is more a supportive and independent living, which is also another kind of a operation. So what we have been reaching out is to various different partners to help us create these. We don't have the expertise to run an inn. We don't have the expertise to run a supportive living or even to build sixplexes and fiveplexes. And so exactly how it will work, I don't have the answer. It's 100% going to depend on who those partners are and how we collaborate with them. But that is something that we are looking at because Darren and I cannot do it all. So we're looking for the right partners for the right things who have those expertise and how they finance. We partially, it's going to be a mixed bag. But we will be involved in some way for the whole thing. Just some will probably say seniors living. I don't know how to deal with seniors living or how to run an inn. So I would prefer to have an expert do that. So yeah, it's a work in progress. And we have started discussions with people already in that industry, but obviously we can't get too far down in those discussions without knowing that we have at least the ability. So we're in that we can talk theoretically with people, but not get any more detail than.
Okay, thanks. That gives us an indication then. Yeah.
Okay, Betty, over to you. And thank you, Scarlett.
Am I live? I can't see myself. I just want to go back around to the transportation planning part. I thought I read something about shuttles and things like that. Has there been some exploration of that idea, perhaps in combination with the concept of a ferry service?
I think I'd want to go back and look at the traffic study and think about it also more carefully in the context of phasing. But shuttle service, you know, as a privately run kind of amenity offered by a development interest on as part of the project is kind of one side of that. The other, I think, is interesting around transit service and the extent to which the street network would allow for extension of transit service to Cowan Point based on a certain population and trip threshold, right? I don't know what that is exactly, but I know that that is a reality of compact development, right? It is by intensifying how many people live in a very specific area that can be easily serviced by transit. The design of this space can very easily accommodate a central transit pickup and drop off point, right? And weave that back into the trunk system that services back to the cove. So that to me is the most interesting option if we think about transportation opportunity there.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm cognizant of our time. It's now 7:43, so we are running a little bit behind. Questions, it was good that we were able to get some answers to those questions. But unless somebody has a very urgent question, I'm going to suggest that we thank the delegation from Bowen Island Properties and get into our discussion, beginning with a presentation from Daniel. So one last call. Any urgent questions? No? Okay. Daniel, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brenda. And yeah, thank you for that follow-up. I'll just start by saying my internet has been bouncing me off and on so far, so I'm hoping I stay here, but if I freeze or something, please try to let me know. Brenda, I have a presentation for tonight, but essentially it's the same presentation that I gave at the last meeting. So I know you all been engaged in this. So would you like a presentation as a refresher, or would you like to go straight into discussion?
I'm not feeling the need for a refresher, but if I'm seeing no one saying yes. Okay, so I think we can dispense with a rehash of the presentation and jump straight into our discussion and comments. So I guess I will ask Sarah to start keeping track of the comments that are made in the hopes that we can get them into some sort of format that will be useful for council's purposes. And
I'm just going to I'll start it in a Word document, and then from there, hopefully we can just merge it all into a recommendation.
okay. All right. So I've got a number of comments, and I'm proposing that I will go last in the hopes that most of you will address them with what you have to say. And Kirsty, I saw your hand up
Sure.
first, so I'm going to ask you to go ahead, please.
Okay, and I actually, as a neighbor, having been involved in the original development that Bowen Island Properties put together and their predecessors, I have a reasonable knowledge of the area. So there's three things I want to focus on: water issues for this development and the whole area, the history and the projected future on this proposal in the larger context of Bowen Island Properties and the neighboring properties. And then finally, I'll talk about APC and our role and stuff. I guess, first of all, and they sort of blend together, which is a problem. But right now, I'll start with water. There are 170 designated subdivision sites for Bowen Island Properties right now. They're trying to increase that. So we're not talking, it makes it sound like we're just talking about a little development. But of the 170 properties, and my numbers aren't going to be exact, but there are 65 built houses. Each of those houses, it's a 2.5 acre allowed subdivision because they had to give 50% to park. So 2.5 acres per unit. So each of those is allowed a coach house. So why I'm saying all this, and then the neighboring properties that also use the water, there's about 120 acres that have 18 houses on them right now, but there are under 2.5 acre rule, that would be 50 houses. 3 years ago in the summer when we had a drought, our dam went dry. We weren't allowed the water from the lake, and because they were running out of water. So you're talking about 65 houses plus the 18 that we have that have always used the lake, and we're talking about really upping that number. I don't understand how it can be possible. I'd love it to be possible, but I just don't understand it. I also wouldn't like to see that just because Bowen Island Properties got an additional group of allotment of houses, plus the 170 that they originally had, that they get all the water and then all of the neighboring properties don't get it. Because that, in my mind, would not be the right thing to do. So that's that piece of it. When we talk about history, South Bowen Community Association is an association that has just about all the houses down here as members. It was started as a direct result of Bowen Island Properties' initial development plans. There's anyway, I won't go into detail, but originally there was an inn approved. There was commercial approved, and nothing has happened. So I'm not sure what any of these amenities are, and I'm not sure that this, that's already approved in the original project. So we're going to build an inn, not really understanding why that's, an excitement, because it was already allowed. It never happened. We're at now 30 years into the various developers, 25 years maybe. The other thing is affordable housing. I'd love it to be affordable on Bowen. I just heard a couple of days ago that John Reed isn't building his apartment complex because it's not affordable. That's in a really easy flat area. How is this going to be affordable? So it would be wonderful if it was, but unfortunately the reality isn't. So that, shiny present isn't realistic. So if you look at the math, it just isn't realistic. And so if they raise the lake, sure, great, we'd have water. And what else was I going to say? So what we thought as the South Bowen Community Association were promises of these things, a dock, a marina, all that, it was allowed under zoning. So we don't know where that went wrong, but it did go wrong. Now, I think the other thing that led me into the APC thing is Bowen Island Properties wants to avoid the 50% park rule. Fair enough. I don't think it's a great rule either, but it's a rule that as the APC, we force other people who want to do rezoning a subdivision to follow. So why would we let a big group, which is the reason why we have the 50% park in there, is for these big developments. Why we let a big developer throw that away or not have to adhere to it when the small people that we poke our nose into, we force to. So that really concerns me. And it's just something that we can control. So anyway, I know it's a bit of a diatribe, but I have some real concerns on this property, the lake for everyone, and that includes the houses that are already there who are part of South Bowen Community Association as well. Are they going to have their access to water? Are they going to have enough water for their coach house that they are allowed? So anyway, now I'll shut up.
Well, thank you. I wonder, in terms of what we take from that in terms of a potential recommendation to council then, water is a big one that I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And
Water
so,
for the property and what it wants to build out, but also for the other people that have licenses on the lake, have licenses on the stream, and have already been basically told to not use water when there's just no build out. So
if I can maybe help out, then the need for there to be a better study or more studies to determine that the water source can serve what is currently allowed, and even what is currently allowed and not yet built, as well as the other users and the increased density.
and an impartial study, not one provided by Bowen Island. Well, they're going to have to pay for it, but it needs to be impartial.
Okay. All right, Sarah, did you get that?
Yeah, so if I have needs to be more impartial studies to determine that the water source can serve what is currently allowed and not yet built, as well as other uses and increased density.
Other existing users and yes, and the density that is being applied for now. Okay, and then you also had one about a concern about affordable housing and whether this would truly be affordable. And I just to jump onto that, I believe that Darren referenced a $500 per square foot building cost when we were doing the site visit. I don't know if Richard, you or Betty heard that, but I believe that's what was discussed. So will the housing be affordable? How will this be affordable? What are the guarantees that this will be affordable housing? Because the land is expensive out there, as well as the cost of building. And then the third thing, Kirsty, that you had raised was that this development should have, this application for increased density should also have to comply with the 50% rule that is contained in the conservation development policy.
If we apply it to others, if we're going to apply it to everything, if we're going to apply it to some, we should apply it to all.
Well, it's a policy that seems to be mandatory. So unless the policy itself is revoked, then I would suggest that I would agree with you that it's a standard that the municipality has. Richard Underdown, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just to Kirsty's point about water. I've read that the comptroller of water has determined that there is enough water in Josephine Lake to service the additional homes that are proposed, as well as all of Callan Point. Who is the comptroller of water? Is that not an independent body?
I don't know who the comptroller of water is, but I do know that what happened with, so the comptroller of water may not know what they're talking about.
Well, that's possible. I just don't know if that's it seems like it's an independent body with oversight as opposed to, a consultant that's hired and.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that, 85 houses. I didn't get to use any of my agricultural water. We cut down on all our use because we
Yeah.
were asked to, and we wanted to be, part of the solution, not part of the problem. But that doesn't bode well for the future.
No, summers are drier and longer. And
Yeah.
so yeah. But we do have a report saying that there is sufficient.
And one of the things that I kept hearing in the discussions on the site visit is that, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but condos are only going to use 215 liters a day or whatever. I don't remember what the number is. And they probably are only going to use 215 liters a day in the winter when they're not watering the pots on their deck or any their any of the surrounding area gardens. Excuse me. But in the summer, and there's lots of water in the winter. In the summer, when there's not water, they're all going to be using more than 215 liters a day or whatever it is. Excuse me. Oh.
Okay, any other things that we want to include in our feedback for council? Richard Domeyer, and then Betty.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. I mean, we've heard that it is possible to I guess ensure that commercial components and other sort of necessary components to making this a project that is an asset to the island as a whole, rather than just a local, rather than just locally benefiting a developer locally. That there is a way of ensuring that those features are incorporated. So I'd like to propose that we ask for that, that we ask that the part of the approval contains commitments and plans to phasing so that these components are that they will be implemented. I'd also like to say one of the public comments related to parking, and I don't know, when I think of this development, somehow Whistler comes to mind. Where so many people travel to Whistler by car, and then there are large parking areas sort of set aside for all the cars for all the cars. And I guess my hope is that this will not only be a development that benefits locally, but that benefits the island as a whole and the area around the island, that people in the neighboring communities will be able to use the amenities. So again, that's about the parking. One of the alternative transportation ideas was motor parking, and I think that's a really good idea to help with maybe not, they won't reduce trips maybe, but it'll certainly help with parking. So I'm hoping that can be implemented. I don't know if
I didn't get your last point,
just my
Richard.
hope is enough of a recommendation.
I didn't get your last point about parking. What form of parking?
Modo, the car sharing company.
Oh, right.
Car sharing, yeah. Let's not say Modo, let's just say car sharing, because car sharing, it's a very good way to reduce the parking requirement. And as people have said, it's a steeply sloping site. It's going to be really difficult and expensive to build parking into some of these buildings. There's likely going to be a sort of common parking, some kind of common provision for common parking. And I don't know. I think the common parking I think the parking is important. That there needs to be enough to actually meet what the need will be, rather than limiting it so that we hope that people won't use cars. I don't think that's realistic anymore. That was a dream, but I mean, we hoped that we would stop climate change, but that's a dream, and it's not didn't happen, and it's not going to happen for a long time. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a ramble, but maybe you can make something of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much influence anybody has over what Moto or any of the other car sharing companies do in terms of coming to Bowen Island. Are you?
Well, it's not so much that they would come to Bowen Island, but that we provide parking, because one Moto parking spot can equal 10 regular parking spots, because it's car sharing. So that car doesn't sit in the parking spot for the whole day, except when you take the kids to school. That parking spot is used by 5 different people during the day, and the parking requirements and overall are reduced.
Okay.
So I mean, it is one of their recommendations. It's one of that really, I think, is a good idea. I would support that. I think it made more sense to me than electric sort of golf carts or a bus shuttle service that probably will never, won't last. Might be there for a while and then it'll just fold. At least motor parking spaces are something that's kind of there forever. As long as there's a need for car sharing, and there will be a need for car sharing, especially in that location, right on the other side of the island, for sure.
Richard Underdown?
Yeah, just to pick up on that point, Richard and everyone, I think that ultimately there is going to be the need for an expanded bus service, part of the existing bus service to this area of the island. The existing 2 buses that run back and forth to coordinate with ferry sailing times are not adequate to also service Cowan Point. So I think some consideration has to be given to getting Cowan Point onto transportation at some point in the future. I mean, bus transportation. In the same way other areas of the island are serviced. I don't think a shuttle is something that's going to be sustainable. It's just not a good idea. I do think Richard's point about moto and car sharing is a good one. And as you were talking about that, it brings to mind an area in Victoria that I've watched be developed. It's actually in Langford, and it's a community of smaller, affordable homes that are semi-detached and standalone 1,500 square foot homes. And the problem is the people that are attracted to buy those need to use a car to get to work. So each of those families have 2 cars. They're 1-car garages, and everyone tries to park in the street. There's not adequate parking in the street. And that's further exacerbated by the fact that the homes are small and there are growing families. And so they use the car, they use the garage for bicycles and, ski equipment and everything else a young growing family needs. And it's just comical to see the sidewalks blocked by cars that can't fully park in the driveway. They can't use the garages. People are trying to park in the street. And, the Amazon truck's trying to deliver to that neighborhood and can't even turn around. So I can, that's in my mind as I'm picturing the build out of Cowan Point. So transportation is going to be an issue.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a couple points that I wanted that haven't been covered by others that I would like to make. And in one of in Daniel's materials, there is a table 1 of the proposed OCP text amendments that accompany this application. And in my view, what's being asked for goes a lot further than it needs to, even if this application was going to be approved. Under the OCP General Residential Land Use Management Policies, they're seeking the removal of, if I understand this correctly, Daniel, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Policy 129, which talks about, I'll just read it. The provision of multi-dwelling units will be achieved through density reallocation. There will be no overall increase in the total number of primary dwelling units than was anticipated in the 1996 OCP. And then as well, they're seeking removal of Principle 3, notwithstanding the potential to adjust the distribution and location of dwelling units on the island, the overall number of primary dwelling units anticipated in the 1996 OCP will remain the same. I guess my point is that I'm not in favor of making OCP amendments that aren't required in order for the application to be granted. And, you know, that principle and that policy may very well be amended or removed, modified in some way in the review that's currently going on. And to me, it just seems like a bad idea to be talking about the removal of policies that apply island-wide for a very confined development proposal. And then the other, there's also a request to remove altogether policies 146 and 147, which I also don't support because they, policy 147, I believe when Edward Porter was making his presentation, he mentioned that the proposal complies with policy 147. So that makes me wonder, then why does it need to be removed? So I would suggest that it not be. And yeah, so I don't think that when we're considering applications that we should be approving any amendment of the OCP beyond what is absolutely or recommending that council approve the amendment of the OCP beyond what is absolutely required. I think there should be a minimal intrusion on the wording of the OCP with respect to these types of applications. So that was one point that I really wanted to make to council. And I guess the other point was one, Kirsty, that you made, which is the point about the application of the conservation development policy. I know that there is a feeling on the part of the applicant, the developer, that a lot of community amenities have already been provided. But, you know, a golf course doesn't really, in my respectful opinion anyway, meet the nature needs half philosophy behind the conservation development policy. What we're talking about now is 151 more units. I think that a densification from 9 houses and potentially with secondary suites versus 151 more units, that's a real value that's being added here. And so I do think that the conservation development policy should have application. And yeah, I did watch the Committee of the Whole presentation, and I did see the presentation made by the South Bowen Community Association, and it did seem to me that many of the people who participated had pretty strong feelings about the ability of the existing water system at Josephine to be able to support so many additional units. So I would agree with the recommendation that, we really need to be confident in the ability of Josephine to support 151 more units and the population that goes with them. And it just strikes me as counterintuitive that there are water restrictions already in the summertime for the existing users. So why would there be water restrictions if there was a lot of, enough extra capacity to go from 9 lots to 151 units, more units? So that just, to me, doesn't make logical sense. So I would really want to have confidence in a comprehensive water study.
Yes, because also, Brenda, there are a bunch of other lots that are already there that are still for sale or sold or whatever. I don't know. There's they took 9 lots out, but they had 170, so, or 15 lots, whatever it was they took out. So there's a bunch of other properties there that haven't been developed. So it's not only, it's those plus the incremental that they're asking for.
Right. Yeah. No, I take your point. So unless anyone has anything to add, I wonder if, Sarah, we should ask to see the notes that you've been diligently taking so we can try and do some wordsmithing if needed.
Okay. I'm going to share. Can you see that?
Yes, so we can.
Okay, I'm going to have to make it bigger though for you, right?
With my vision, please.
Hang on, I'll put it here again so I can see.
Thank you. That's
Okay,
better.
how's that? Is that better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, I missed, excuse me, I missed the affordable housing one. I sort of missed some wording on that one. And I'm sure there's a lot of other changes that you're going to want to make, but this is what we have.
All right. Yeah, I wonder if to the first sentence you might add, particularly considering that there are water restrictions already implemented during the summer months. Kirsty, does that adequately capture it? Okay, affordable housing.
Yeah, I sort of missed that one, sorry.
Yeah, so Richard, I'm not sure, was that yours, or Kirsty, was that your point?
I think that was part of Kirsty's.
Okay, Kirsty, I'll ask you to unmute yourself and maybe have a go at completing that recommendation under that heading.
Oh, Kirsty's actually, sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen. She's just coming back in now. She must have lost connection.
Dropped off. Okay.
Okay, she's coming back.
Sorry, I dropped off.
Okay, that's okay. I was just going to ask if you were able to sort of finish the thought about affordable housing, and I can chime in to help if you wish.
I guess I think affordable housing is a really wonderful offer in this proposal, but I can't see how it is possible. if John Reed can't do it on cheap land on near Grafton Lake, how can it be possible here? It just doesn't, it doesn't compute. And yes, I know the services are in, but they have to be compensated for that. So that doesn't really, that's neither here nor there. The services were in for the original lots. The math, I don't understand. The math doesn't work.
So that the feasibility of affordable housing, okay, be further investigated. Or be further,
And somehow the developer should tell us how they're gonna do it, because it is a problem. Everybody's having the problem.
Yeah, so it's a known problem, and
They
this
need-
site
They
is
need to
much more
present a
difficult.
solution.
This site is much more difficult than other flat sites. You can't do a 2-floor walk-up apartment building here, which is
Yeah.
the cheapest thing to build.
so that the proponent be required to provide further details about how they intend to provide affordable housing as part of the proposal?
Yeah, on this type of site.
Sorry, Brenda, would you just repeat that?
That the developer be requested to provide further details regarding the plans for affordable housing on this site.
Can be accomplished.
Okay, regarding how the plans for affordable housing can be accomplished on this site. Regarding how the plans for affordable housing can be accomplished on this site.
Yeah, the devil's in the details on all of this affordable housing, as nice as it might be.
Okay.
And then, okay, can I just change the wording? Sorry, I missed that. That there was on one summer water restrictions. So it's not like every summer, but that dry summer that there have been. Yeah, with only around 85 residences on the water on Josephine Lake water.
With only 85 residences.
Around, yeah, put approximately, because I don't, it's not exact. Residences.
Yeah, residences CES.
On Josephine Lake and yeah. Residents on Josephine Lake watershed. I think that's probably the better.
Or water system.
Waters.
Whatever.
Well, no, you see, it isn't, we aren't on there. Nobody else is on their system. Bowen Island Properties has a system and everybody pays into that. The other 120 acres that are on Josephine Lake all have their own water licenses and their own systems. It's got nothing to do with Bowen Island Properties.
Okay, thank you. So watershed.
Yeah. They just have to open the spigot on the lake to fill our dam to fulfill our needs or our license needs.
Okay.
At the beginning of that sentence, can we replace the word more with further?
And
Yeah.
a third party.
Impartial, third party.
Sure. It just implied that the studies undertaken to this point were not impartial.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then the third point seems pretty straightforward that the
Brenda?
applicant. Yes, yes. Oh, sorry, Betty. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that one because Daniel explained to us that because it's actually quite a small area, the 50% from nature is difficult to achieve. And my concern is that the developer were very poor ecological stewards of the original development. And so I think there's room there for them to go beyond what might be like physical 50% of a very small part of Seymour Bay by doing some improvement of the ruined ecology out there.
Fuck.
So how do we talk about that? Like, I think
Okay.
it should be a negotiation, not just a straight up 50% of this small area.
Right. Okay, that's an excellent point, in fact. So maybe maybe just say be required, let's start with just saying required to comply with the conservation development policy. Leave out the 50% part. And then Betty, are you suggesting that we give them a
Look at
hint
the
that
overall development, not just this new bit that we're approving.
maybe so then which could be done by
Sacrificing some of the other lots they have.
Or getting rid of some of that gorse. Or repairing some of the stream destruction they've done. There's a lot of things.
So I guess, are we saying it could be done by like ecological restoration projects? Is that, or
yeah,
further land
yeah.
dedication elsewhere? Something
Thank
like
you.
that? Like,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I think that captures
But
it.
is that an either or is that as well?
I think it should be a negotiation.
So we can say which could be achieved, for example, by ecological restoration projects.
So is that, are we on this? Is that this
Yes.
piece of of their, not, because they've got several other phases in mind.
Yes,
So
I know.
So that's like there's a bad history and an unknown future, and of what the next thing. Well, I am being blunt, I know.
I think in this one we're saying achieve, by, for example, ecological restoration projects or, protected land outside the project area, I think is what the discussion was about.
Yes.
Okay.
But in addition to like what is already protected, like the park, for example, that goes down to the beach.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so, Sarah, if you could say after the word achieved, if you could insert, for example.
Yeah.
I think that's got it.
Yeah.
Of protected land, not or protected land.
Oh, I was thinking or because it's like these are examples.
Yeah,
Like we could see
too,
restoration
actually.
or additional protected land. Maybe that's clear that it's different.
That's clearer, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we've already said it at the end, in addition to what is already protected. So yeah, you can take that out. So Daniel, I'm assuming you can help with interpretation if council is not understanding exactly what we're talking about.
Sure. And then the next point, I can just say that the comptroller of water rights is the provincial agency essentially that oversees private water systems in BC. So the Cowan Point Water Utility is it's not administered, it is overseen by the Comptroller of Water Rights. And so anytime Bone Island Properties comes to do a subdivision,
Okay.
or make any changes to their water license, they need the approval of the comptroller. So that's who the comptroller is.
Okay, so let's
Um,
eliminate this point. That
yeah.
was just a question that somebody had. Yeah, that's not for council. Okay, so this point I think might need a little more work. Richard Domeyer, this was your point, and I think you were reacting to something that was included in Edward's presentation, which talked about specifically, I think it was development servicing agreements can help to ensure what gets built. And that's done by requiring that a certain element be built when a certain unit threshold is reached. So, Daniel, did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, that sounds right. Like in some of our developments, we end up with, and they're often different mechanisms, but essentially it's like a phasing plan or phasing agreement that is tied to it. That essentially tries to lay out, in phase one, you can build these things, but you have to deliver these things in this phase. And so, yeah, and I think it's helpful saying if the APC is saying certain of the thing, like if what we want to see is the commercial component, if that's some of what is envisioned, then that's helpful to spell out.
Right. Yeah, I think that, Richard, if I understood your point, you were concerned that things that reduced, for example, the number of trips into the cove, such as, a coffee shop or a corner store, those would be the types of things you would want to see tied into phased build out.
Yeah, I mean, I like the wording that's here, that all components maybe including commercial components instead of all components, just including commercial components.
Are we going to ignore what they promised the last time?
No, I don't think it's about
Because this is
I
just
think it's different, Kirsty, because when you have much higher density, it's going to be a different
fair
commercial.
enough. But 30 years ago, this was a huge density for this area. So going to 1 to 2.5 from 1 to 10 was a big change. So but
I think that's my point, right? It wasn't carried out in the past, so we want it carried out now because that's what makes it a benefit to the to the broader community.
Do we want to ask, sorry, that we understand what the complete, we don't want to approve this in isolation of what's going to happen with the rest of phase one. This is phase two, and what is some understanding of 3 and 4, because I think it's hard to approve a proposal when one isn't finished, you don't know what's going to happen to it, and then there's others that are coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we don't approve this in isolation.
That might be making it too complicated, but I think as the development sort of becomes more detailed, then one will be able to see what the components are that are adding to the are of a benefit to the community as a whole, and are not just additional housing. It's a little hard at this stage where it's just a sort of a red square on the map.
Yeah. I have a question. The way this is worded, we're saying all commercial components. And one of those commercial components is, either an inn or accommodation. Do we care about that? If anything, that's just going to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. That, I think as the development sort of fleshes out, Daniel and maybe we will, start to identify what we think are the the components that are of a benefit to the community at large, and not just locally.
But it's the amenities also of the promise of a exercise area or whatever that's in one of the nodes. And
I think those are, those are the. I think, you don't have to go to the gym at the community center or in town. You've got a gym there that reduces trips. They're not in this phase, but I think there's a proposal for a school. Imagine if kids could go to school here rather than all being driven to school back and forth every day. So, it's the components that are going to reduce trips and are going to be of a benefit to the neighborhood that benefits the entire island.
All right. Well, so I guess I'm concerned about all commercial components. So perhaps
commercial and amenity. Don't take out the all.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard that amenities were not a word that we wanted to use. Maybe just that's components of the proposal that are of a benefit to the community as a whole are carried out.
The amenities are what's behind why they're asking for the zoning. They're talking about seniors build units and affordable housing.
I don't think that
local
seniors,
exercise things.
I don't think that seniors housing is a benefit to the island as a whole. I think that's.
Let's have a more orderly discussion if we could. So let's work for now on this wording. So Sarah, I think you had highlighted commercial and amenity, and I do think that should be deleted.
Yeah, we can delete that.
Yeah. So to say that the community amenity components of the proposal are carried out.
No.
Yeah.
No, that components of the proposal that are of a benefit to the broader community are carried out. Yeah. Yeah. No.
It's one. Sorry. Components. There's a C. It should be the. Does everybody agree that this wording captures what you had in mind?
Well, I think it's to the local and the broader community, because if they're saying that you buy my house and if you buy a house here, then you get, somebody will pay for building a local
school.
I can't remember, exercise thing or whatever. That's something that Darren was talking about. I can't remember what the wording was, but he's got an area blocked off that's going to have a lap pool but I don't know who's going to pay for it. It's all on a hill.
All right. Well, and there's a subjective component to that too. I mean, figuring out, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to be doing this tonight, but it's a subjective assessment as to what is a benefit to the local and broader community.
Yeah.
Definitely there's a subjective component there, but as I said, I don't think that we need to figure that out this evening.
No.
Can we throw a
okay.
comma in after community?
Hmm?
I think it just reads better if you put a comma after community.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Brittany.
Okay, next one, that parking be sufficient, that people in other neighborhoods be able to use the amenities.
Are able to use the amenities.
Okay. Now we're getting picky.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep, looks good.
car sharing parking options be considered to reduce parking requirements. Okay. That the anticipated inadequacy of future public transportation be recognized and that transportation impacts and needs be fully considered in the evaluation of the proposal.
Needs and solutions and possible solutions.
Yes.
Isn't it the inadequacy of current public transportation?
Yes, it is current.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's no bus route out there and no public transportation at all.
No.
Okay. I think the next point is really, that was my point, and I would put a period after supported.
It's not supposed to period. And just take the rest off?
No. That modifications to the OCP beyond what is absolutely, that consideration, how can I put this? Modifications to modifications to the OCP should be kept to the minimum.
Why don't you just stop there?
What?
Or is that? Well, oh no, isn't that what, but isn't that the key thing?
Yes. Yeah. After minimum, period. Does that make the point? Does everybody think?
Oh, sorry, I covered it.
Yeah, no, you please do delete that. And yeah.
I think that makes sense to the current OCP, I guess. I guess that's obvious that it's the current one.
Yeah, well, and before long, we're going to have a new one.
New one, yeah.
So I think maybe we just say the
Okay.
OCP.
Good.
How about should be thoroughly considered instead of kept to a minimum?
Okay. I think my point was that
A minimum.
if a development application doesn't require I think minimum is actually correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that modifications to the OCP should always be thoroughly considered. But my point is really that don't do more than what's needed. Like even if everyone thinks a development is great, I do think that the wording of the OCP should be respected just as a general principle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really what I'm trying to say there.
Fair enough.
I don't think the next point about the golf course, that was more just like a comment that I was making.
I think that is covered.
Yeah.
That we-
Talk
Yeah.
about-
But I do want to ask you all about including a point of understanding how this request fits in the broader development plans
Plans.
for Bowen Island properties, because we shouldn't, if we look at everything in its isolation, we may make wrong decisions, or the island may not understanding. You know, we don't need to have fully fleshed out things, but I think we need to know what's happening to the first phase. How is it going to be completed? This is phase 2, and what are 3 and 4 that are sort of mentioned? Or what are the future phase? Yeah, what are upcoming? Does everyone comfortable with that addition?
Yes.
Yeah, I think when it's known that there are other phases, and Darren did reference that in our site visit, I do think that it's a part of the context within which this phase should be considered.
Yeah. What's happening? And so what are the upcoming phases, and what's happening to phase 1? When is the build out happening on phase 1?
What are the development plans for upcoming?
Yeah.
What are the development? But also there are only 65 houses built on 170 lots now. So what's the plan for that? Is it so, are the lots sold, or did they cancel them? I don't know. Nobody knows.
Well, yeah, I think in phrasing it as what are the development plans for phase 1, as you pointed out earlier, Kirsty, they already have approval to build things other than homes, single family dwellings. So, you know, development plans would include, like, maybe
Yeah.
there are some plans to build other forms of buildings.
Well, the inn that was approved in plan in phase 1 is in the same place as the inn in phase that they're asking for permission for now, in the same general area.
Okay. Okay. I think we've done it.
Yay.
Okay. I'm still in North Van, and I have to catch the last ferry of the evening.
Well,
So
Did you want to make this a recommendation, or?
yes, I
Yes.
believe we do.
Okay. So I'll stop sharing so you can see the votes.
Yeah, I guess before we call the question, does everyone agree that we've captured adequately everyone's thoughts? Okay, I'm seeing the sort of nodding heads. So do we have a mover that we send these recommendations to council for their consideration in relation to this application? Richard, seconded by Betty. Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? No, passed unanimously. Okay, thank you, everyone. That was, I would like to say that was a lot of reading that we had on our plate. I believe we had, that was over 300 pages of reading, and I read every single one. It took a while. So thank you for that comprehensive package. All right, so the next item up on the agenda is item 5.2, which is 1620 Joan Audrey Lane. And Drew, I believe that you are bringing that one forward for us.
You bet. Thank you. Just trying to get to full screen here. There we go. Thank you, APC. So Bowen Island Municipality has received an application for a land use bylaw amendment, which is for the purpose of amending a previously approved rezoning application in phase 3 of the Arbutus Ridge subdivision. So the original plan for phase 3 was to have 14 cottages and accessory structures, all located within one large property. These cottages would be under common ownership and would be rented out to the tenants. The purpose of the proposed amendment now is solely to establish these cottage units on individual lots to allow individual ownership of the units as opposed to rental. The proposed amendment is applicable only to phase 3 of the subdivision. At this time, phase 1 and 2 of the subdivision are complete in terms of subdividing. In terms of buildings, phase 1 is fully built out with homes. Phase 2 is largely undeveloped, but several homes are currently under construction. So the Arbutus Ridge site is zoned CD18, which is split into 4 different areas or subzones that apply different allowances to the different phases of the subdivision. Area 2 allows cottage residential development and is applicable to this phase 3. So the proposed amendment put forward by the applicants is to create a new area of the zone, which would be a variation of the existing area 2. And all changes to the allowances under the zone are related to the proposed change to the lot layout of now, having the buildings on individual lots, allowing individual tenure as opposed to buildings under common ownership. The applicant's rationale letter explains the challenges in financing the project, that the original common ownership layout has proven unfinanceable as it requires one entity to finance and carry the full capital cost of site works and construction, and then to recover those costs over time under a rental framework. So this change that they're seeking will not seek additional density and is strictly a tenure enabling amendment, and the existing housing agreement and eligibility framework will remain in place. So because no CP amendment is not involved with the application, a public hearing will not be held. Instead, public.
Okay.
The applicant has already contributed amenities, including parkland and trails, through the original rezoning application. So staff now are not seeking additional amenities, and we thank the applicant for their contributions. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention they also had a large financial contribution to the community center, along with parkland and trails. And otherwise, the applicant has confirmed that they remain committed to fulfilling the trails remaining in phase 3. So with this being the next phase in residential development previously approved by council, the proposed change is not expected to have any impacts apart from supporting the financial feasibility of the project. For this reason, staff recommended the council refer the application to the APC for recommendation. They also went on to refer to the Parks Environment Climate Action Advisory Committee and the the Accessibility Advisory Commission. So thank you.
Isn't there some rather unique history that attaches to this piece of land in terms of the proposed use?
I'm not sure if you mean like past history, and there's the housing agreement that it's in terms of the eligibility framework, in terms of who's going to be living on these properties, it's for people with Down syndrome or other disabilities, as well as seniors, as who's eligible.
And that stays, does it?
That's correct. Yeah, that part's not changing.
Yes, that's what I wanted to verify, that was remaining in place with respect to these cottages.
Yeah, I was on the APC. I've probably been around for too long when this was discussed, and we didn't think that it could ever be completed as proposed. And supposedly the backer had huge deep pockets, but it didn't seem like it was going to happen, and we all knew that, and the APC was still supportive because of its unique use.
Yeah, well, I was aware of the unique use, and I was, I just thought it might have been helpful to have it as part of the package.
Yeah.
Councillor Jurgensen?
I was going to originally answer the question that Planner Backen has just described, but I did want to flag something attached to it still. While I am sympathetic to the developers' model not working with as far as like having single ownership, my big concern is what the provisions in those housing agreements are for, sorry, what they are in those housing agreements for, in case that, let's just say a person with a disability or a senior does not end up renting, or sorry, purchasing all those houses. How does that fall back? The same question I would have had if this was still coming forward as a rental model, like if there was not enough persons with disabilities or seniors looking to rent them, what would happen then? The reason I say this is because, and I'm not saying that this particular developer is doing so. In fact, I'm sure there probably aren't, but again, a concern with these types of developments is that if you price it at a point where a person with a disability or an older adult cannot purchase it, you've effectively kicked in any kind of thing in a covenant that says, or a housing agreement in this case, that says, well, if you can't do that, then you can fall back to Plan B. And again, I don't believe the developer to be engaging in this kind of behavior. I just wanted to flag that as something I've seen with my work with many properties that have special uses attached to them, especially around disability and older adults. So I wanted to flag that, but also ask ourselves, by changing it to an ownership model, are we eliminating that target group all the same? Because for a lot of people, especially those on fixed income, owning any kind of property is really a pipe dream, like especially when we're talking again about disability here. You know, a lot of folks on it are on very fixed incomes. They're not going to have enough to rent in a lot of cases, let alone purchase. But renting is still way more attainable for this population than purchasing on the whole. And I don't know. I should maybe leave these comments for the accessibility committee to bring up, but I figured it was relevant to the APC's work as well.
I totally concur, Alex. It's Kirsty. It is promises and then it doesn't work out, so then it changes.
Yeah, and since we don't have it before us, just for everybody's benefit, I do actually have a copy of the housing agreement in front of me. And so the definition of disabled person in the housing agreement is a person with Down syndrome or a similar disability as confirmed by a practicing medical doctor. And the definition of qualified occupant is one or more persons who are a senior or a disabled person, a caregiver, a resident caretaker, or a staff member, and includes the spouse of any of these persons, and also sons and daughters or parents who are living with those persons. And then a senior is defined as a person who is at least 55 years of age, or a person who is deemed to be physically disabled by a doctor and therefore requires the same type of assisted living facility as if 55 years of age or older. Which I have to laugh at. Most 55-year-olds that I know are pretty darn fit. But at any rate, but good question. And I wonder, Drew, if you're able to answer, what will happen here if these properties are not, like, what will prevent the developer from coming back and saying, well, I didn't have enough disabled people or seniors who purchased these units.
Okay. When I read over the housing agreement, yeah, I don't remember seeing any flexibility there or any fallback options. It did seem to be strict on that. It was somebody with those named disabilities or senior. Yeah. Sorry. Beyond that answer, I guess I'd want to go back and review the document with that question in mind.
I mean, there's a lot of problematic language in that part of the housing agreement, not least of which is the way it describes, a senior person. and construed that with a person with physical disabilities. I don't know how one would even quantify somebody needing the kind of living arrangements of a 55-year-old because a 55-year-old's fitness ability varies so much.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that could mean anything from almost perfect health to terminally sick. And it's like I really don't see how you can quantify that whole range there. The other thing that I am concerned about is that these two groups are not equal in many cases. Seniors, if described as 55, tends to be way, way more financially stable than a person with a disability um, would be if on a fixed income. So we're talking about two wildly different groups, and there's obviously intersections between the two as well to consider, but I would have to question why it was written this way to allow for persons with disabilities and seniors rather than having persons with disabilities just include physical disabilities within that definition. And again, not seeking to cast any shadow on the developer. Um, I'm just kind of wondering how that was arrived at originally, and if we know this piece of history.
I do not. Kirsty?
I don't know because it went from the APC to the Planning Part Muni, and I don't know how things changed. We basically approved the base upzoning of the whole property based on this is my memory of that in our conversations that we were very pleased with the upzoning of the property if it provided this resource to the people with disabilities, seniors on the island. And it was I think it was a family issue, and they wanted a place. My memory is they wanted a place for their child to be able to live, a reasonably independent life within a care area. And we didn't understand how it was going to work, but we thought it was a really fantastic goal. And it's all nice and it's pretty flat, and there was going to be gardens, and there was going to be sort of work there and maybe sell stuff from the garden, and so it all was a really shiny, lovely project, and so therefore the rest of it we were happy with. But when I say I don't think we really thought, and Alex brought it up again, is many of the people that would want to come and live here are not going to buy in case they can't sell out. Whereas a rental arrangement, which is what it was originally going to be, is you come and you stay for a few years, and then, like if you're a senior, maybe you die and then you have to sell. But or your family suddenly has to move because the disabled person or the old person dies or moves on, or has to go into a home. So this purchase arrangement really, now that I think of it, isn't going to work.
If I may, I have had direct experience in developments like this one was originally proposed to be, where it's a supportive care environment, um, you know, for persons with disabilities. So much about how this came to pass that you just iterated through in the history. That's my recollection as well. However, where I see the issue potentially here is those types of care environments really depend on community, really depend on all the neighbors to be working together. Sometimes you'll have one carer who cares for persons in multiple dwellings. It's really designed to be a property that's operated as is set out in the housing agreement by a caretaker, and that's not unintentional. That's part of it. It's someone to support all the caring that goes on in things like personal supports and whatnot. And my concern is this is now all of a sudden being individual lotted as well. So it's like you're all of a sudden taking that whole community infrastructure that you need to make some of the thing like this quite successful, and you are instead depending on that to grow organically amongst neighbors. I really don't think that that would work on its own. Typically, in my experience, these types of facilities, and in this case, it's cottage style. So I guess we'd call it maybe a little neighborhood, but typically require an operator, often a nonprofit, that fills that role. And yeah, I'm just concerned that we're losing quite a bit here and getting quite a downgrade to the original vision. Would love to be proven wrong, but just kind of the things that jump out at me from my own personal experience in these types of settings and doing work in them.
Alex, can I ask you, if we don't approve this change, is there any possibility of it going back to the way it was? Like, are any of these facilities or areas that you talked about, do they happen?
There's definitely a lot of examples.
Climate and economic climate?
There is definitely a lot of examples. We've got everything from tiny home villages to apartment blocks. There's different formats it can take, and even with the economic climate, it's really about having the supports in place, and that's why it's usually nonprofits that back this kind of work. Because these people that are described often have a lot of accessibility needs that require personal care and other personal supports. So that's typically funded by organizations like Community Living BC and other such entities, but the work is carried out by a disparate amount of nonprofits across the province.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Jurgensen. I saw Daniel's hand first, and then we'll go to Richard Domeyer.
Thanks, Brenda. I just wanted to say I put in the chat the staff report when the housing agreement was introduced to council. So it was in 2018. So the rezoning of the whole property was done in 2014. And then 2018 was when the first phase of the subdivision went forward. And that's when the housing agreement was entered into. And so the report at that time it's fairly high level report, but sort of says what was intended in the housing agreement to meet the terms of the rezoning that had taken place. And then clearly, that was 8 years ago, I guess. The developer has tried over the 8 years to make the project go forward and has now brought this application because they were not able to develop it as they had envisioned.
Okay. Richard Domeyer, and then Richard Underdown.
I'll be very brief because I think that everything, I didn't know the history, I had no idea. So, but everything, as Daniel says, they made an attempt. It didn't work. This proposal does not provide all the benefits for housing with supportive housing that you would be able to get with a larger building. Sorry, I don't. Yeah, I was just trying to figure out what the conversation was, and now yeah.
Okay. Richard Underdown.
Yeah, Kirsty, can you remember back to the original presentation as to whether or not there was some sort of communal hall where meals would be shared and support staff would?
Yeah, it wasn't like the units were going to be, I think, standalone, but it was like well, actually, I've never been to Belterra, so I shouldn't say that, but I think there was, community was a really important thing. And working in the gardens, being around green things, and having it as a grounds for people to be safe in and to be productive in, with thoughts of, I think, workshops, that a real productive thing for people to do, and community. That's exactly how I remember it anyway.
That was somewhat my understanding, and I just don't see any provision for any of that in this plan. And Alex, you brought up several points, excellent points that I really hadn't considered. But another is who's enforcing this? What is the remedy if, 3 years down the road, the occupant of one of these cottages isn't described in the housing agreement? Someone owns this land, fee simple. I presume they are the ones that have built the cottage on that land. How do you enforce occupancy rules?
That makes a great point. And
it is a strata. It is a strata, so there is management. So the people who are able to move in here would only be people who comply with the housing agreement. But I think as Alex says, it's not. There's probably an expectation that people will build these places themselves, and who can afford that? There's no supporting organization helping to kind of make it happen for people who are not don't have the same benefits that
Well, yeah. Can I just answer the question that was initially asked, which was, what do we do if somebody moves in? I have the agreement in front of me, and the remedy is, Daniel, I don't know if you were just about to speak to this, and then I'll get to you, Councillor Jurgensen. But in section 5.9 says, or 5.7 says, upon request by the municipality, the owner will promptly do such acts and execute such documents as the municipality may reasonably require to give effect to this agreement. And the parties agree that this agreement may be enforced by prohibitory and mandatory court order of the court. So I guess the answer is that the municipality asks the owner to take whatever action is required in order to comply. And then if the owner doesn't do it, then the municipality has to go to court to get an injunction or an order of the court compelling the individual to do so.
Well, it wouldn't be the individual, it would be the strata. Because the strata is controlling the whole
development. Well, what the agreement says is the owner. That's what the agreement says.
Yeah, which would be the strata.
Very well.
Maybe.
That's an interesting one, because that works when one person owns all the things. But when they are individual, what do? Cut your leg off and say, I'm disabled so I can stay? It doesn't make any sense in the new. This is an interesting one, because like so many, one of the things about John Reed's development that everybody really liked was the affordable housing. There's now, so yes, great, go ahead, do it all. Now there's no affordable housing. But he gave $1 million. So how do we deal with these things going forward, with the promises? And then as an APC, we probably need to think of them all individually, but boy, is it happening more and more often.
Yeah, that's a good point. Councillor Jurgensen, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, the reason we're seeing this not working in the proponent's own words is that it's economically unfeasible for them to do so. Having said that, has it ever been put to them that perhaps this phase may need to just be abandoned by the developer because they obviously can't make that part work and should be leased to an organization who can make that work? Because nonprofits have a lot more infrastructure building power than an individual or even a corporation can on the tax side, because they're just simply fundraising tools that don't exist to corporations or to individuals that are existent to nonprofits and charitable organizations. So maybe what I'm proposing is, instead of them renting it off and having to build all the infrastructure on it to rent it, they might want to look for a nonprofit partner who's willing to lease the land, build the infrastructure, and run it as intended in the original design. Maybe it's something that hasn't even occurred to them. I don't know. Maybe they've tried down this road and have found no success. But it's something that just pretty clear to me that this is not going to ever be the kind of money-making endeavor that would make it be successful. These things usually are not profit generating in any way, shape, or form, and are typically financed against organizations' reserves, which an individual typically does not have unless they're exceedingly wealthy. So I don't know. Just my thought there. I will be bringing that idea also to this discussion at the council table when it comes back for council discussion.
I think this raises an interesting issue for us because, as Kirsty said, this does seem to be happening in other areas of the island as well, where developments were given the green light on the basis that the developer would do things for the greater good, for a community benefit. In this case, housing for people who are disabled and seniors, and in the John Reed example that you mentioned, affordable housing. So and what should happen if the developer finds that it's uneconomical? And yet there was always that risk. When the developer initially made the proposal, there's always a risk that things change down the line and things aren't going to be as economical as they were before. And do we then consider a proposal like this, which allows for ownership for those cottages to be held by individual owners? And I agree with Councillor Jurgensen's comments that they are unlikely to be owners with disabilities. They are far more likely to be seniors who have the funds to be able to buy a cottage on a nice island. Yeah, so there's no requirement that the senior be infirm in any way, just that they be age 55 or up. So it turns out to be quite a different thing with no community benefit. And yet the initial high density zoning was based on there being a benefit. And I think that's kind of a really thorny dilemma. And yeah, Daniel or Drew, do you have any comments about that?
I'll leave this to Daniel if he has anything to add.
I mean, I think I would say in this development, what we see in terms of what was captured by council in the original 2014 rezoning was in fact the provision of parks, trails, of water improvements, and of financial contribution to the community center. So the fee simple lots that have been created, each one has a covenant that at time of subdivision they contribute, and I forget the exact amount, but I think it's $500,000 total towards the community center is my off the top of my head recollection. And so essentially by looking at what was required, it's like those were required and have been delivered, or there may be some of the parkland remaining to be delivered in the final phase. I'm not completely sure, but but essentially the way that the covenants were set up was that what isn't what needs to be required, and then that there is this potential for this cottage residential development under the terms of the housing agreement. And I don't know if that was because council sort of understood that the financing for it may not be possible. That like this would be great, that's something that people support and know that it may be a stretch to be delivered.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think
Well-
in terms of the overall housing agreement, I mean, I think looking at it, like it's clearly written to be a rental development. And so it's possible that if council proceeds with the rezoning to do it as a strata, that there may be need for additional covenants. So I know for the Belterra development, we have an overall housing agreement that lays out the affordability of the affordable housing home ownership units in the Belterra development. And then we have further covenants. So the municipality has a right of first refusal and an option to purchase each of the affordable housing units. And that's essentially the backstop to say if this isn't, if if the sale of it doesn't meet the terms of the housing agreement, well, we can enforce in court, but we have an option to actually full on purchase the unit directly and then sell it at that affordable housing as an affordable housing unit. And so it may be that that's something if this goes forward, as it goes forward to say, okay, what else would need to be in place given the change from a rental to a strata development?
Okay. I have to catch a ferry, and if I don't leave my office now, I will be sleeping in my car tonight or in my office, neither of which are desirable. I am happy to have Kirsty take over the chair and for you to continue the meeting. I don't feel able to make a recommendation based on the discussion we've had so far this evening. So I'm not able to leave you with any pearls of wisdom in terms of what I think a good recommendation would be. We do have some other items that I think we are going to be needing to be meeting about soon. And so I'm kind of tempted to defer this conversation, the conclusion of this conversation, to our next meeting. I don't know how others feel about that, but I'm going to leave you with that thought because I do have to sign off. I think that this is important information that needs to be discussed further, and that it wasn't in our package. So I appreciate that for some of the committee members, the news about this housing requirement is news to you this evening. And I just barely twigged. I thought, I remember something about this property. And so I looked back in the archives and that's what I found. So I would like to consider it another evening, but I'm going to have to say goodbye. Kirsty, I'm going to turn the chairing duties over to your capable hands, and I will look forward to hearing what you decide to do. Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
sorry to have to run.
Thanks, Brenda. Bye.
Okay. Yeah.
Go.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah,
You too.
get the ferry. Okay, remaining Richard, and Betty. Are you ready to make recommendations, or shall we? Okay, Betty's shaking her head, and
Yeah, I am as well. I mean, there was so much new information that's being presented that I'd like
and
more
I
time.
didn't. Yeah, I didn't think of. I'm not really ready because I didn't think of it. Really, I thought of it. Didn't think about it hard enough. I didn't really think about the absolute impossibility of selling lots to people to build houses that fit the profile. So I don't see that it, unless Alex's suggestion that it goes, they are required to offer it to a supportive housing group. I don't see how it can go forward personally, but I think I'm comfortable with thinking about it, and then we'll come with thoughts. Oh, Betty, you're muted. Betty,
Can't hear
I
you.
thought I unmuted me. Drew, do you know if they've talked to Birch about it at all?
I couldn't speak to that. Daniel, are you aware of anything like that?
We're not aware of that.
Yeah, I would think that they would be a resource for us.
Yeah, and they might actually have some knowledge about whether it actually was a feasible development without it being sponsored by somebody. Like originally it was sponsored by a person who wanted an area for their child, is my memory.
But somebody who would be interested in sponsoring, or it seems like an idea that needs exploring a lot further.
Before we say yes, but okay, well, can I make a recommendation that we table our recommendation to council until we meet again, and we'll put it number 1 on our agenda?
It's cool with me.
Okay,
Second that.
moved by Betty, seconded by Richard Yu. You're happy, Sarah?
Mhm.
Okay. Then I guess we're ready to call it quits. Adjourn this meeting.
I'll just, Kirsty, if I can just flag,
yeah.
we had put those 2 other referrals from council, thinking we wouldn't get to them, which proved to be accurate.
Oh,
As
I didn't even
6.2
read
and
that.
6.3. So what we thought essentially is like we would have discussed them with you and then probably looked for a site visit. And then, or we would have like introduced them to you and looked for a site visit and then come back to a future meeting. So instead, what we thought we would propose essentially is that we would look to do a site, like we'll send out a doodle for a site visit for those 2 properties. So I guess 2 site visits for those rezonings, and then to discuss at a future meeting.
Great. Sorry, I actually missed that on the agenda.
Okay.
What were the other locations?
Sure. So there's one that's 1658 and 1639 Mount Gardner Road. It is 2 civics, but it's one address. It's past Mount Gardner Dock. That way, and one which is 2 properties at 670 and 648 Buchanan Road. So the staff reports and the applications are in the agenda, and then, like I said, we'll be canvassing for a site visit. So I think next Friday we meet with the Parks and Trails Committee on both those applications, and then we'll be trying to canvass for a site visit.
Okay, and are you talking about one site visit, or we're going to go to the 2 in one day?
I think it'll be 2 separate days.
Yeah,
They're pretty geographically far, so it would be hard to do one and then into the other. So.
And I sort of tentatively scheduled another meeting. I didn't tell you guys, but I did sort of block it off in the calendar for Wednesday, May 6th. That may be too soon if you are doing the site visits on 2 separate days. I don't know how you feel about that. What I thought was maybe tomorrow I can send a doodle poll out just for that one day and see if I'll have a chat with Daniel, I guess, about timing, but maybe I'll send out a doodle poll just for that one day and just to see if that works. And if it doesn't, then we can just do a normal poll with a bunch of different days to try and figure out when to do it next.
that sounds like a good plan to me. And sorry, Daniel, I hadn't read the end of the agenda. I was overwhelmed by what we were doing already.
Yeah, so I just thought I would mention it. So
thanks.
When we send out a doodle for a site visit, you'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks. So we're ready to say good night.
Good night. Thanks.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks, everyone.
Kirsty, Daniel.